Hello. Assalamualaikum, Brother Zahir. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Just give me a second.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Hey, Brother Zahir, can you say something? I might not be able to hear you.
Hey, can you hear me now?
Okay, we're good.
Okay.
So we have about a minute to go.
Okay.
Is Hina coming?
I am not sure. She said that she's going to be outside and if she'd join if she can.
Okay.
Welcome, Dr. Baum. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you, Zahir.
Okay, so how do you want to do this?
So I guess I'll do a very short introduction of the organization and what we've been doing, and also a very short introduction for Dr. Baum. And I'll turn it over to her.
Okay, so we have about a minute to go. I'll start recording and start the webinar when. So, or do you want to let people in for first couple of minutes and then?
I'm sorry again.
Do you want to give like people 5 minutes for people to come in and then start, or you want to start like right on the?
No, let's give them a few minutes if it's okay with Dr. Baum. Okay, so let's give them a few minutes and then we can start. Doctor, how long do you think you would like to speak for before we go to questions?
I think about half an hour. It would be good to get a time prompt at the end of half an hour if I'm still going.
Okay, so we can, Wahid, can you take care of that?
Yeah, sure. Okay, so it's 7. I'm going to start the webinar, and then we'll go from there. I think at 7:05. That's when you'll start speaking.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. So, are we in? Are you allowing people in now?
Not yet. I just wanted to make sure we're all good.
Okay, so yeah, let's allow them in, and then we'll ask them to wait for a few minutes so that okay. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Shalom. Peace to all. Thank you for joining this webinar. And let's give a few minutes for everyone, some others who might be joining in. So a couple of minutes if you please. Thank you. because I forgot to unmute myself. So thank you again, everyone, for joining. And we are just allowing a couple of minutes for everyone to join. Give us a minute, please. Thank you. Okay, it's 8:05. Inshallah, we'll start. Thanks everyone for joining again. We have, mashallah, a good number of participants. Assalamu alaikum, shalom alaikum. Peace to everyone. And we are very happy to invite you on here for a very important topic. And this has to do with a topic that a lot of people have been asking us about. And unfortunately, a lot of us do not know the best ways to take that into action. What I'm talking about is boycotting things that come from Israel so that it actually has an effect. Alhamdulillah, tonight we have Dr. Dov Baum with us. She is a very experienced person in this area, and she works as the director of the American Friends Service Committee's Economic Activism Program, which tries to bring light of corporate involvement into many different aspects of daily life for us normal citizens. She joins us from San Francisco, but as far as her involvement in Israel is concerned and with the occupation, she is the co-founder of the organization Who Profits from Occupation, and also the co-founder of the Coalition of Women for Peace. She is the co-author of an essay, Economic Activism Against the Occupation and Working from Within, which was published in the Case for Sanctions Against Israel in 2012. And she has been interviewed by many, many different media outlets, and she is a wonderful collaborator to have on our side and on side of all activists. Dr. Baum, I turn the mic over to you.
Thank you so much, Zahir. I feel very honored to be invited to speak here today, but I also want to acknowledge the obvious. I know all of our hearts are now with the people of Gaza as they are being attacked ferociously. And some of my own colleagues that work for the American Friends Service Committee, the organization I work for, are in Gaza. And we've been getting some of their sporadic WhatsApp messages over the last few days as they were running for their lives. And now, of course, there is no communication with Gaza. All communication has been stopped by the Israelis. And there is a sense of great fear and apprehension. So I hope you join me in praying for the safety of all people in Gaza, as well as in Israel. I'm an Israeli myself. I'm an Israeli Jew. I've been working almost all of my adult life for creating a vision for a joint life for Palestinians and Israelis on the land called Palestine. And I watch in horror as my country is committing this horrible genocide. And also as this vision seems as farther than ever. It's really heartbreaking. So I want to say that in the last hour or two, when I was trying to prepare for this webinar, I found it really hard to center myself as I was watching the news. And what I'm going to do with you in the next half an hour is just to share some information, some of the work that I've been involved in the last 15 years, and some ideas of what we can all do going forward. And I want to encourage you to think of all your questions. You can put them in the Q&A tab underneath here, and we will have time for Q&A. And I think that's the most important part of our session today, to try and answer any questions you all might have. Let me start by showing you some old slides. These are not new slides, these are old slides, so my apologies. I would need someone to enable me to share my screen. Wahid? Just waiting. So while this is being taken care of, let me start by saying that I was fortunate enough to be introduced to the Palestinian resistance and liberation movement as a young peace activist with the Israeli movement, and be invited to the demonstrations against the apartheid wall in Palestine back in the early 2000s. Why am I telling you about something that happened 20 years ago? Because I think this is where I learned most of what I know today about the movement I'm part of. These were demonstrations of entire communities that came out of their villages to protest the wall being built on their land, on their fields. They went out empty-handed in front of the Israeli military. They were being shot at, they were being killed at times, and they invited Israelis to join them. And coming there, I've learned something I didn't know before. And first of all, I've learned that this is a Palestinian movement, and the leadership of the movement is the Palestinian leadership, and that this is Palestinian liberation. And it is important for me as an Israeli to be there because I want to save my own country and our own conscience, but it is a Palestinian struggle. And the same structures and the same popular committees that were leading that movement 20 years ago came out in 2005 with the Palestinian call for boycott, divestment, and sanctions. It's the same movement. So I think probably now I can share my screen. Yes, thank you, Wahid. And I'll just show you some images, and then we'll stop and show you some other stuff. I have a lot of things I can show you. So 2005, the call comes from a local movement on the ground in the West Bank that includes 170 different civil society organizations, including women's organizations and youth organizations and Muslim organizations and communist organizations and labor groups and parties. It is in fact until today the widest coalition of Palestinian civil society that exists. That is the BDS coalition. And it comes on top of civil disobedience and civil resistance on the ground. So the call for boycott, divestment, and sanctions is in a way a call for the international community to take action to support action on the ground. It is a complementary action. It is not a goal. The goal is not to boycott Israel or the occupation. The goal is to liberate Palestine and so on. But boycott is a tool. It is just a tool towards that goal. One good resource you can all rely on is the website here, bdsmovement.net. BDS stands for boycott, divestments, and sanctions. We'll go over them one by one shortly. Remember the ending .net. You can find there the actual Palestinian call for boycott, divestment, and sanctions from July 2005. It's worthwhile reading it. It is a call on people of conscience around the world, that is us, yes, to enact tools that are non-violent tools such as boycott, divestment, and sanctions on Israel until it complies with international humanitarian law and principles of human rights. And the three demands of BDS are actually codified in the slogan you see here on the logo under Handala, the refugee child standing with his back to us. Freedom, justice, and equality. Each one of them refers to another part of the Palestinian people. Freedom is for the Palestinian people living under occupation since 1967 in the occupied Palestinian territories. That is the end of the occupation. One goal. Justice is for the part of the Palestinian people living in exile, in the diaspora all around the world, asking for the internationally recognized right of return for the refugees to come back home to Palestine. And equality refers to the part of the Palestinian people living inside 1948, so-called Israel, and asking for full equality for Palestinians living inside Israel. This is a rights-based approach. The BDS movement does not specify any one solution to the conflict or to the questions that are part of the conflict in Palestine. They don't say we should have one state or two states or 5 states or 15 states or no states at all. They say that whatever political solution is accomplished, it has to abide by the three principles, three internationally recognized rights of end of the military occupation, full right of return for the refugees, and full equality for people living on the land, whatever political solution there is. And this is a very wide call that I think the entire Palestinian people can agree with, and all of us can agree with. And it's also a very basic call in the way of what it's asking us to do. Before I go to what it's asking us to do and talk about the three things, boycott, divestment, and sanctions, let me also dispel another piece of disinformation about this movement. It's a movement, not an organization. So there is a coalition in Palestine, or in the West Bank, to be more precise, of civil society organizations that is serving as the hub for this movement. And it has a lot of good policies on the websites and calls for action and so on. But they don't run this movement. It is not top down. It is really a loosely knit network of grassroots initiatives, as is written on this slide, which means that there can be groups that call for some type of boycott and other groups that call for another type of boycott, and they don't have to agree with each other. And that is actually promoted because the world is a big place and many of us are in many different circumstances around the world, and maybe even different political positions. As long as we all agree on the three very basic human rights as principles that kind of ground our work, then we are part of this same movement. Which means that if people come to you and say, oh, this BDS activist in Australia said that blah, 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 so you cannot be associated with this movement, you're telling them, well, you know, so they said so. That doesn't mean anything. What I care about are the principles that we all agree on of the movement. And I can tell you, after all these years, since 2005 until today, what is it? 18 years I've been in this movement. I find the Boycott National Committee in Palestine to be extremely principled and extremely consistent in their abiding by principles of human rights and equality and justice for all. And I'm proud to be part of a consistent movement like that. Let's move a little further. When I was young, 2005, I was active in the Israeli movement, and when the call came out, the call for boycott, divestment, sanctions, it was very confusing for me as an Israeli activist. What would it mean for me as an Israeli to boycott Israel? Yes, it is very hard to wrap my brains around that. And I was active at the time with a group called the Coalition of Women for Peace. And we decided that one thing we can do is to become a resource for the movement globally. Because we were Israelis, because we understood the economy and the industries inside Israel, and we had the freedom of movement, because we understood Hebrew, because we could speak to the world and the racist world would listen to us more, we thought, oh, maybe we can help see what are some good targets for boycott, divestment, and sanctions. When I searched the web 18 years ago and I looked for boycott lists, I saw a lot of nonsense out there. Not very helpful for a global movement to have a lot of nonsense out there. So this is when we started a project called Who Profits from the Occupation? I'm proud to tell you that this is actually still active today. It is an independent research institute that is run mostly by Palestinian women inside 1948 Israel. And they are still the only source of credible information about the economy of the occupation. And this is how it started. We would go around and just take pictures and talk to people and record what we can. Let me pause this presentation for a moment because I can go into it like an automaton. I gave this presentation so many times and I don't want to do that. So let me pause for a moment. There is a lot of pushback on BDS. And I'm sure some of you have seen legislation against BDS. I would be very happy to tell you more about it later if you ask about it. Comparing BDS to violence or anti-Semitism, there's a lot of pushback, and people are actually a little wary about using the word BDS. I want to go back to the basics. What is the call? What are we actually asked to do? We are not asked to endorse the call for BDS. This is an old misconception. You don't have to agree with the language of the call, which you can find on that website I showed you. The call is a historical fact. It came out. It is there. The call is a call for action. And so the only answer to the call that comes from people who are under a very brutal military occupation, the only answer to a call for action is action. So the only thing we need to think about is what kind of action can we take? What kind of action in response to this call makes sense to us? That is the question. That's a moral question. That's the only moral question we can ask. And what is this call for actually? Boycott is a kind of a consumer strike. Divestment is an investor strike. Sanctions, actually, if you go to the definitions of the Boycott National Committee, sanctions refer to governmental actions. This is when we ask actually governments, states, cities to withdraw their support to Israel, to stop military aid to Israel, for example. That would be a form of sanctions. So what we're talking about is a strike, withdrawing our support as citizens, withdrawing our support as consumers, withdrawing our support as investors, this is a form of non-cooperation with evil. It is not a lot to ask. We're not asked to go and liberate Palestine. We are not asked to go and punish somebody. There is no punishment here. We are not boycotting anything as a punishment. We are asked to withdraw our own complicity. And that is the minimum we can do. In fact, it is a lot to do. I'm assuming that many of us live here in North America, and the ties from North America to the economy and industries, including military industries in the state of Israel, are very deep ties. So as I see it, there are two types of boycotts, or two ways of thinking about boycotts. One is what we call the clean hands approach, which is, I don't like this, so I don't want anything to do with this. And therefore, I will be clean. And I think it's a good approach. And I think we all apply it when we go and we shop in our favorite grocery store. And we're like, oh, I heard they are, I don't know, performing experiments on animals, so I don't want to touch this brand. This consumerist approach is also very capitalist. I think advertising campaigns, commercials really rely on that. They're telling you, if you buy this shampoo, you will be beautiful and young. So we kind of identify ourselves with the consumer products that we consume. So we don't want these dirty products in our house. And that is perfectly okay. It is an individualistic approach. The boycotts we're talking about here are of a different type. These are political actions. They have to be done collectively, not individually, because we want them to promote goals in the real world, not just feeling good about what we buy and what we don't buy, which is important, but it is not enough. In other words, the boycotts we are talking about are collective actions. That's why I'm thinking of them as a strike, a form of a strike. If you decide that you don't like your employer and you don't go to work, you haven't done anything. But if you collectively decide with your fellow workers to withdraw your labor from your employer, you do that because you want to sit at the table, because you want to be influential, because you want to have a say where you didn't have a say before. That is what we're talking about here. That is my main answer to the first question I'm always being asked. And the first question is, give me a boycott list. They all want a boycott list. And I've been asked for a boycott list for 20 years now. And we do not have a boycott list. I'm sorry. It would have been great, but we don't have a boycott list. What we do have is a list of campaigns, coordinated, local, national, international campaigns that you can join. And these campaigns sometimes use the strategy of consumer boycott, and sometimes they don't. And if you want to boycott a specific product, I want to urge you not to do it alone. I want to urge you to be strategic about it and join others in doing it. And, reach out to us or to anyone else who can help you build a powerful campaign. Let me show you a couple more things, because there is so much that I want to show you, and let's try and use our time wisely. So this is my PowerPoint, but let me go to the internet. So first of all, this is a really good website. This is the website of this organization I told you about, who profits from the occupation, that I helped found back in 2006 as a response to the BDS call. Check it out. There is a lot of good information here. You can also search for specific companies. Hundreds of companies are listed here with a specific involvement in human rights violations as part of the Israeli occupation. whoprofits.org. Over the last 11 years, I've moved and I live now in the United States, as you heard, in the Bay Area. And this is a project of the American Friends Service Committee that my program helps publish. It is called Investigate. And a good URL for it is investigate.info. investigate.info. That's it, investigate.info. This is a tool for divestment. What does divestment mean? I mean, some of us may have investments. I think most of us probably don't. We probably have a pension fund somewhere with our employer if we are lucky. But that doesn't mean that divestment has nothing to do with us. This is a tool devised to help us ask our employer to divest, ask the organizations we work with to divest, ask any institution that we are associated with to divest, because they all have some kind of an investment fund. They all have some way in which they are invested in the stock exchange. And if they're invested in the stock exchange, most chances are they are invested in some of the worst companies that are directly responsible even for the attacks on Gaza today. That is just a fact, because that's how the stock exchange works. So this is a tool, it's very, very, very technical. It's kind of a very geeky, yes. It involves 3 different topics because we do more than just look at the Israeli occupation. It also includes prisons and the prison industry in the United States, and the US-Mexico border and surveillance technologies and immigrant detention in the United States. But it also includes a search engine. You can look here for a company. Let me look for a company like IBM. I can search for IBM. I know it's on here, so that's why I found it, not so surprising. And it's telling me that this is one of the world's largest IT companies. It's a major contractor for US immigration authorities, and it runs the discriminatory Israeli population registry and provides technologies to the Israeli military. This is an example. A company such as IBM is deeply complicit in the military siege on the Gaza Strip. People now running for their lives in Gaza, unable to leave, actually are doing that also because of IBM. IBM, it seems so benign, running the Israeli population registry, but that means each and every person born in Gaza is registered by the Israelis as born in Gaza, and therefore they cannot be moving anywhere else. So Israel is imposing a very strict system of movement control over Palestinians in the entirety of the land of Palestine that is segregated by different parts of the land and different types of IDs, and that is aided by the IBM systems. These are not just computers that they buy off the shelf. The IBM actually runs this system. The company runs this system. I'm just giving you this as one example. So you can find a lot of very important data you didn't know about. If you go here under occupations, you can get an explanation of which kinds of crimes are we tracking in this database. And then you can see our divestment list. These are the companies that are the worst of the worst that we recommend for divestment. In other words, we say you shouldn't be invested in them at all. It includes companies you know and many companies you don't know. And if you go back to the first page here, you can uphold a list of holdings if you have it from your university, from your place of work, if you work for, I don't know, a public hospital or a faith organization. You can actually even put here a name of a mutual fund, and it will tell you what is invested in this mutual fund. If I'll just put here even just like the very basic Vanguard, which is like a very popular family of mutual funds. Many people are invested in Vanguard around North America. You can see all of the Vanguard funds, and each one of these funds, if it's red, it means it's red. It's invested in some of those companies. And you can click on any of them and also find out what are they actually invested in, how much of their money is invested in it, and so on. That is our tool. It's very geeky, I know, but you might find it useful. I'll show you one more thing. I have so many things I want to show you. Why do we care about divestment? Here is a good slide for that. It is one of my favorites. Sorry, I'm moving fast. On the left, you see a hearing, a picture from a hearing, I think in UC Irvine, University of California in Irvine, a few years ago, when the students were debating a student resolution for divestment, asking their university to divest. And on the right, you see a picture from the city of Portland, where people of the city of Portland were asking their city to divest from the Israeli occupation. And in each of these cases, I have to tell you, the city and the university did not divest. These were actually very successful campaigns, even though no money has moved. On the left, we have about 100 universities all across North America where students have passed student resolutions for divestment, asking their universities to divest. Universities have not divested, not even one. And with the city of Portland, there was a partial victory. They have passed the legislation. The city was forced to rearrange its entire investment structure, but then they have taken it back a year later. Why am I telling you that? We are in a very difficult political moment. I think the repression against speech for Palestinian rights has intensified many folds. And in fact, in some places, just speaking right now for ceasefire is considered support of terrorism. It is unbelievable what is going on. And yet, the call for divestment is allowing us a way to make the issue of Palestine and Palestinian rights a local issue. It is no longer about something that is happening across the world from us. It is about our own money. It is our own tuition money as students. It's about our own tax monies as citizens of residents of a city. And it is helping us make the case that we as a community do not want to be invested in harm for others. In fact, many of these communities are saying, do not invest in the stock exchange. Do not invest in weapons companies. Do not invest in human rights violations anywhere to anyone. Invest in our own communities, in our own well-being. It's a very easy ask that many people can connect to, and it is a response to the call for boycott, divestment, and sanctions, and it is connecting us globally with a movement that is a very consistent movement that is trying to build an anti-apartheid movement of our age. So I'm saying a victory in such a campaign is not always moving money. The effect of a BDS campaign is not always an economic one. Sometimes it is. We had a series of very powerful, very successful campaigns targeting specific corporations, such as IBM. You know, IBM is running the Israeli registry system because the previous company that ran it was targeted by campaigns all around the world, and they stopped doing it. That was Hewlett Packard. Hewlett Packard was running this system before IBM, and they couldn't afford to continue doing that. And now IBM is doing that. The same with the campaign against a famous security firm, G4S. We had a famous campaign on this really pathetic company that makes soda machines. You know, it sounds really very obscure. We're talking about the lives of millions. Why should we talk about soda machines? But sometimes these little campaigns that are funny, that get many people to engage with them, that are very educational for people. They want to know why we shouldn't buy this soda machine. What's going on here? And it was also a great success because this soda machine was forced to leave the illegal settlement where it was doing its production, sending a very strong message that you couldn't do business there with impunity. let me just move ahead because we have, I think, at least 36 different corporations that had to move out of the West Bank and sometimes out of Israel altogether due to the success of such campaigns. And maybe one more strategic word about these campaigns, this kind of campaigns. We think this is a lost cause. Yes, the odds are so much against us. It is so hard to get people to care about the lives of Palestinians, especially here in North America, basically because of racism, I think. And yet we target corporations and we succeed in moving them. And one of the reasons why is because corporations are very risk averse and they cannot really withstand any kind of conflict. And we have a huge conflict here. So they don't want to be the symbol of the Israeli occupation. Nobody does. I'll show you one more thing before we will maybe pause and see if there are any questions. I have a lot more to show you afterwards. I'm just trying to kind of pace myself. I'll show you one more thing, and that is a campaign that we just launched in June that I want you to know about, and I think might be interesting for you all. And that is called Apartheid Free. Apartheid-free communities. You can find out more about it on apartheid-free.org. Apartheid-free.org. This is also a call from the Boycott National Committee in Ramallah. They have launched a global campaign called Apartheid-Free Zones, asking different businesses and institutions to declare themselves apartheid-free. And this is our call, and this is here in North America. We are asking communities, organizations, it can be a small group of local group that works together. It can be a large national organization or your mosque or your book club, declaring ourselves apartheid-free. It is a symbolic declaration. If you go to the website, there are lots of good resources here. Videos you can show, educational materials, reports from the UN, showing that this is an apartheid situation and explaining a little bit of the context of what is going on now in Gaza. But what we really want you to do is to scroll down and take the pledge. This is the pledge. We affirm our commitment to freedom, justice, and equality. Freedom, justice, and equality, remember that from the call for BDS. For the Palestinian people and all people. We oppose all forms of racism, bigotry, discrimination, and oppression, and we declare ourselves an apartheid-free community. And to that end, we pledge to join others in working to end all support to Israel's apartheid regime, settler colonialism, and military occupation. That is a pledge. It's a symbolic pledge. To lean into that pledge would mean to think about how are we supporting these things? Which are the ways in which we are complicit and withdrawing that support? It's the same idea, withdrawing our support, cutting our ties to apartheid. It doesn't have to mean BDS, but it is really the same kind of thinking as BDS. We have 170 communities that already signed since June. Of them, 75 are faith-based communities, Christian and Jewish and Buddhist and Muslim. And I want to invite your communities to also join this pledge using this website, because this is a budding global anti-apartheid movement. I will stop sharing and I will pause here for your questions, and I'm really happy to answer any question that you have. I will need some help though navigating those questions. I don't know if Zahir, you can help with that.
Sure, I will certainly try. So some of the questions, a few of the questions had to do with what products should we boycott. I think you already answered that. But there are a few questions that I have marked as ones that we should be able to answer live. So I guess the first one would be from Munir. Can the BDS movement include Israel's main supporters, governments, media, and companies?
Include meaning target?
I guess so, yeah.
So here is the thing. The good targets are not symbolic targets. The good targets are things that you can actually influence. So what we encourage groups to do, not individuals. This is not for individual action. Remember, this is for groups. So get together with some of your friends or with your favorite organization, and we can help. You can reach out to me and we can help you discern what are good targets for you. Your target can be, I'll give you an example, okay? I love examples. I'm a researcher. Whole Foods all across North America is now selling pita bread. If you go into Whole Foods, you will see Angel Bakeries pita bread. In fact, in our area, they have their own stands. And Angel Bakeries, if you go to our website and Google it, or if you go to our website and just put it in the search, this is an Israeli bakery. I wouldn't think about boycotting bread, you know. So it's an Israeli bakery. They don't make missiles. They make bread. Bread is good. Yes, we want people to have bread. But in this case, this is a bakery that is also operating in the illegal Israeli settlements, and it was highlighted by the UN as one of the companies that support the Israeli occupation. You will see it there. So they're selling pita bread in your neighborhood. Maybe you want to do something about that. Maybe you can talk to the store owner and ask them to stop selling that pita bread. And if it is coordinated action, and many people ask for that, that might have an impact. Maybe you can pick it outside and educate people about this bread that they are going to see when they go in and where it comes from. And that's an opportunity to educate many people about the occupation. So this is how BDS works. It makes it local. So it's really not about a boycott list. It's really not that. It's not as if, you know, sometimes people think that boycott is like a weapon. You aim it to destroy something. And so do we want to destroy Israel, or do we want to destroy the settlements, or do we want to destroy the occupation? But that is really not how it works. When you boycott something, you have to realize, what am I going to do? I'm not going to destroy it. That's not how it works. Most of the times, we are using it to educate. We are using it maybe to change policies. Well, at the best, we are using it to cut ties and to exact some kind of economic price. So where can we be effective? That's the first question we want to ask. Are there campaigns out there that we can join? There's a fabulous campaign led by several organizations. You can check it online. It's called No Tech for Apartheid. The website is just that, notechforapartheid.org. And it is targeting Microsoft, I think, and Google for Amazon and Google. I have to be precise. Amazon and Google, two companies that we're very familiar with. It's not calling for a boycott. So don't think you need to boycott Amazon and Google. It also makes no sense to boycott Amazon and Google. But it is asking us to join employees of those same companies, asking these companies to stop their big contracts with the government of the state of Israel. So this is a campaign you can join and actually be effective. Hopefully.
Okay. We have some comments that we should not only do business with supporters, but we should also buy from those companies who have expressed opposition to tyranny and oppression. Certainly good advice. Thank you, Shagor Salehin. Then another question that I think is important is, what do you advise someone who works for a federal agency? Any specific actions that they can take?
Well, you know, we all, as I said, it's not a clean hands strategy. We are all complicit. I'm definitely complicit. I'm a citizen of the state of Israel. Many of us are US citizens. That's a very, very sad complicity in these days. To begin with, we are not distant from this. And if you work for a federal agency, or if you work for Amazon, or if you work for a nuclear missile facility, there are different levels of complicity. But as activists, we need to think, okay, what does it mean to what we can and cannot do? So I told you that some of these campaigns are actually led by employees of the companies involved. Employees of Google asking Google not to contract with Israel on this big contract that can support Israeli military ability. I heard of some federal agencies, employees that have resigned in the last 2 weeks. So I'm not asking people to resign, and maybe they can, maybe they can't, but if they do, please do it very publicly, but maybe they can work with others to raise up some issues. Maybe they can influence things, check to see what you can and cannot do. It's a complicated world we live in, but we are not alone, and we can work with others to do the little things that we can do, and that's all we should do, really.
Thank you, Dr. Baum. There is a question in the main chat group. Unfortunately, it didn't come through the Q&A list, but I think it's important enough. Would it make a difference if we revoke our US citizenship in opposition?
Revoke the US citizenship? Well, many of us would love to have US citizenship. Let me start by saying that. Not because I love, US policy in general, but because it's a great privilege to have citizenship. So many Palestinians have no citizenship at all. I'm a pragmatic. It's not about symbolics. It's probably very uncomfortable being a US citizen right now. So if it makes you more comfortable not to be a US citizen and you have another citizenship, fine. If you want to affect change in the world, do it with others. Can you organize a group of people who will do a symbolic action, I don't know, cutting their passports to pieces on social media? I don't know, something like you have to work with others in order to influence a change of the narrative, a change in the way people see the world, and therefore also a change in policy. Please remember that we need to organize, even in this day of an age of isolation online.
Thank you, Doctor. There's also another question, which I guess a lot of us are probably can relate with. Shaheen Vora asked that she said that she works in a dental office and no one has talked about this issue, but there are lots of patients coming from different communities, and she's asking if she should talk about it in the office or should she just be good to everyone since no one has said anything at all.
Yeah. And should I be talking to my family about this? If you go to to our organizational website, afsc.org, I'm trying to give you a lot of resources, afsc.org, and you go there to a section about the current crisis in Gaza. We wrote a little how-to guide about how to talk to your friends and family, which I think also applies here. And the first principle about talking to your friends and family about Gaza is to know also when not to talk to them about it. You don't want to lose your friends and family with kind of like arguments when these arguments cannot achieve anything. Sometimes you have to, and sometimes you don't have to. Think carefully, what kind of price are you willing to pay? Don't lose your job over it unless you think it is really very important to you not to be in a place where your heart is being compromised. Your feeling of being a real person is being compromised because of the silencing. Yes, you have to weigh the prices and what you can and cannot do. Try and be safe as much as you can. I do believe that we're going into a time of greater repression, especially for people of color, for Arab Americans, for Muslims, and for anyone speaking for Palestinian rights. We have to support each other. Again, this is a call for organizing. We have to support each other. We have to create ways in which we hear from each other how they're doing, and what kind of prices they're paying.
One other question that I'd take, I think you actually already answered this, but just so that it provides the memory of people. Anne Schaefer asks, how do we approach our institutions to divest? Who generally has the information and who controls the investments? And says that she works for a university.
That is a great question. Thank you so much. Public universities have to publish what they are invested in, especially in the US. If they're a public institution, this is publicly available information. Private universities do not have to publish anything. Still, it is usually easy to find out if the university has any kind of socially responsible criteria for its investment. Most universities do not. Unlike in Europe, by the way, where most universities do. What does it mean? It means that the first ask from a university is not, do not be invested in Elbit Systems, Israel's largest weapons company that is complicit in so much harm in the world. The first ask is, tell us how you actually screen your investment. How do you make sure that we are not invested as a community in the worst things on earth? And most times they don't have an answer for it because they actually don't do this due diligence. It is not part of what they're doing. So the first ask is for transparency and for some form of an ethical policy for investment. And if you ask for it and you explicitly say, because I don't want to be invested in the degradation of the planet, in the destruction of the ability of humans to live on Earth, in war and occupation around the world, including in Palestine, in human rights violations, if you are explicit about that, you're already responding to the call for BDS. But the request, you don't even need to know what they're invested in order to ask for that.
There is one question, and I'm quite sure that it applies to others also. Yunus Nada says that I was invited to join a techworkerscoalition.org and is wondering, how do you go about doing due diligence on invitations to join these organizations? Would you have any pointers for?
You mean, how do you find out more about these organizations and how aligned they are with your values?
I guess that would be it. I mean, I've been telling people because there are many different organizations that do work on Palestinian issues, and some of them completely align with us and some of them do not. And so that's what the due diligence is. There
is a very sad phenomena among progressives, which we called PEPs, P-E-P. I don't know if you heard that terminology. PEPs, they stand for Progressives Accept Palestine. And unfortunately, this is a very widespread phenomena. And in fact, I think it's spreading these days. And it can be people that you've worked with on many other good issues in the past, our organizations that have a fabulous statement about the good work they do in the world. And when it comes to Palestine, it's not just that they have a blind spot, they have a negative spot. They are actually Zionist and they actually support Israel. And it's very perplexing. And sometimes we're part of large coalitions that work on immigrant justice or environmental justice. And some of our valued partners in these coalitions are our opposition when it comes to Palestine. Again, we need to be practical about it. It's not as if we can make decisions of how to arrange the world. I wish we could. We just need to discern who we work with and who we don't. One example is the ADL, the Anti-Defamation League in North America. The ADL is doing a lot of work which presents itself as anti-racist work, anti-Islamophobia. They are partnering in many coalitions around us that do work that is fantastic work. And yet, there is a call to boycott the ADL. So I think it's called Drop the ADL. You can go to the website Drop the ADL, and it is exposing the long history of the ADL as actually working with right-wing agencies and intelligence agencies against us, and even spying on activists on the left, and how instrumental is their participation in these progressive alliances, and how they are using that in order to normalize the support for Israel. And I just want to highlight the ADL because there's an actual call for boycott. Here's another thing. You don't just boycott something. You can if you want to, as I said, individual action. But if there is a call for boycott, that's already collective action. And that creates a moral imperative to at least weigh the cost of what would it mean for me to be in this coalition or not to be in this coalition, to be in this organization or not to be in this organization. Sometimes you have to, but at least there is a call for boycott, there is a picket line that you should consider when you think about it.
We're almost out of time here. Dr. Baum, do you have a few minutes to continue, or would you rather stick to the?
No problem.
Okay. There are two people who have raised their hands, and I'd really like to tell them, if you have a question, please, if you can type it out in the QA box, that way we are fair to everyone. I'd appreciate that. One thing before we go on to some of the other questions, I will say that Justice for All has joined and taken the pledge to be apartheid free. And we are hoping that many of our other communities also will take that pledge. And it is a pledge to work with other organizations who are having the same values as Justice for All and the other organizations that have signed on to that to the pledge. Also, I will certainly say that what happened to was despicable. Loss of lives, innocent lives, whether they are Israeli, whether they are Jewish, Christian, Hindu, Muslim, it doesn't matter what. But when non-combatants and innocents lose their lives, that should be something that we should always stand against that. But we should also stand against what happened today in the Senate, where the Senate resolution was passed unanimously, talking about the students who are protesting against the Israeli action against civilians in Gaza, and they are terming these students as being pro-Hamas. Let it be very clear: we are not pro-Hamas, we are not pro-Hezbollah, we are not pro-anything, but we are pro-peace, and we are pro-justice, and we are pro-freedom for the Palestinians. It is something that they have been asking for a long time, and rightly so. And I do not know what model it might take, whether it's a single state solution or a two-state solution, but whichever model is acceptable to both the communities, I'm hoping that we will see peace in the very near future. And I do believe that the United States can play a very, very major role in making that happen. But having said that, let me also go through some of the other questions and see if we've got something that has not been answered already. Yeah, there's one from Canada. Valerie Dubé asks, I'm sorry if I say the last name wrong. Is BDS illegal in Canada? And if so, how can we deal with this legality challenge?
Thank you very much. I was hoping somebody will raise this question. There was an ongoing, I think for the last decade, a campaign led by Israel supporters all around the world, trying to delegitimize BDS and also spread a lot of disinformation about BDS. One good resource, I think for the United States, not Canada, but check it out, is put together by an organization called Palestinian Legal. And if you go to their website, write to boycott.org, the letter 2. So write the number 2, so the digit 2, write to boycott.org. You will see a map of the United States with all the different states and the what level of legislation has passed there about BDS. Usually those laws around the world in Europe, and I'm assuming also in Canada and the United States, are symbolic in nature. There are state legislatures that pass laws that say BDS is really bad, we're against it. Which means it is not illegal. It is a way for legislators who support Israel to show their support for Israel, just like they're doing in the Senate right now. It doesn't make any of our work illegal in any way. There is another form of legislation that passed in some states, and you can see it on that map here, which is called boycott the boycotters, divest from the divestors. What does it mean? It means that these states have decided that the state itself would not contract with those who boycott Israel, or it will not invest in those that divest from Israel. So the state, in a way, is enforcing a requirement from all vendors that want to contract with the state to sign an affidavit or some kind of a commitment that they do not boycott Israel. That was actually brought to the Supreme Court that saw that as completely problematic. And in many of the states where this has passed, this has been toned down a bit. It still doesn't make it illegal to boycott Israel. So the idea that BDS is illegal is just not true. It is very powerful to pass such laws symbolically, because then, I'll give you an example. When we talk to companies and we ask companies to stop operating in the occupied Palestinian territories, stop supporting directly the occupation, they tell us, oh, the other side says that what you're telling us to do is BDS, and if we do it, we will lose state contracts, or it will be potentially unlawful, and we have to consult with our legal department, and that's very expensive. So you see how it has a chilling effect, even though it is absolutely legal for each and every of us, any of us, to decide who we do business with, to decide what kind of products do we buy, to decide where do we invest. That is the freedom of capitalism, even if it's not even recognized as freedom of speech, which it is. A boycott is a type of speech, and there is no law that forbids us to do so.
We'll take a few questions more. One thing that I'd like to make clear, I am skipping a lot of questions. There are lots of questions, but many of them have been answered by answering one of many similar questions on there. So if I do not take your questions, please listen carefully. We probably answered it somewhere, and hopefully that will be fair on the time that we've got. Amanda Osman asks, there have been online push to boycott companies such as McDonald's, Starbucks, and Disney. I haven't seen these companies on the sites that are shared. Are these boycotts legitimate?
Yeah, so the language we use is it boycottable? And I would say follow the BDS website and our website. There are all these calls, and I'll give you an example. The reason why there was a call to boycott McDonald's was because the franchisee, the franchise holder of McDonald's in Israel, announced that they would support the Israeli Air Force and the Israeli troops and give them money. But as a response, franchisees of McDonald's in other countries in the Middle East have countered that by collecting millions of dollars in support for Gaza. So these are different franchise holdings of the company McDonald's. And you can see that they can take different stances in different countries. And it is not clear what the boycott of McDonald's will achieve. What are we asking the company to actually do? Close down all its franchises? It's a little bit confusing. So I still don't see that as a campaign, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm not well informed. Maybe there is a campaign out there with an actual ask where we can make an effort. I know that people really want to boycott something because it is easy to boycott. And I'm telling you, look around you, you will find a lot of things to boycott, anything to do with any of the companies even, let me be as clear as I can. If you live in the United States of America, not far from you, there is a weapons company. And those weapons are now being used on civilians in Gaza. You want to organize and go and picket there. Seriously. And it's really important to remember that the Israeli economy is not separate from the American economy or from any economy around the world. The economy we live in is actually very centralized. It is not possible to just, what does it mean for me in San Francisco to boycott Israel? There are very, very few products that come here from Israel, but almost any company around me is doing business in Israel. So there is a lot I can do as a consumer or as an investor or as, just somebody walking down the street.
Thank you, Dr. Baum. There are a couple of questions here which are not directly related to the BDS movement. However, I think your insight might be helpful. An anonymous attendee, and just again, we really would like a name for all of our attendees to be on there with the names, because you know what? Unless we show ourselves, unless we individualize, unless we internalize the protest that we do not count. So, but that's okay. He says that I work in a hospital, he or she, I work in a hospital, and some of the workers were saying Muslims are no better than Nazis and they're killing Jews. And now they're on the road protesting, saying similar bad things. It's heartbreaking. How do we react?
I don't know. I don't know. I think there is a lot of racism and anti-Muslim, anti-Arab sentiment all around us, and you're probably the experts on this more than I am. How do you react? I'm really wondering now. Also, I hear a lot in Israeli media. I consume a lot of Israeli media. The comparisons to Nazism and World War II and the Holocaust, and I'm wondering how much of this is coming from the Israeli side, the Jewish side, from generational trauma, and from the white European side is kind of a very inappropriate reaction of cleaning their own conscience from their generational history. I don't know how to respond to that. I think.
If I might, yeah, please go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Cut me off.
If I might add to that, I think the first thing that you can do is really educate. The first thing that we can do, because I am included in this, is to really educate ourselves. What is the exact history as well as the situation of the Palestinian struggle? Once we have that, then we will be able to put together an argument or the narrative that might make a difference. But along with that, I think every single one of us needs to learn how to articulate, because articulation is something that will carry your message with effectiveness, and also speaking. So if you have not been a public speaker, please just get on, these workshops, and we have Justice for All also runs them. Learn articulation, learn the history, learn the situation, and do not get into frivolous arguments. So very often you'll find people arguing that, Palestine did not exist as a nation. Well, it doesn't really matter, because the Palestinians are people. They are not borders drawn on the sand somewhere. Things like that. So I think some of these arguments can be effective, but getting into arguments with people on the other side might not be as effective. But again, learn, educate yourselves, then educate others. So we can, each and every one of us is a student, and each and every one of us can be a teacher.
Maybe I will add something about anti-Semitism. We hear a lot the charge of anti-Semitism. If you speak for Palestinian rights, this is out of hatred of the Jews. And speaking to that, I want to say, yes, educate yourself, because I think all of us can kind of dig down into our hearts and see what motivates us into action. Is it hatred or is it love? If you're motivated by love and care for fellow human beings, this is not bigotry, this is not hatred, this is not anti-Semitism. And you can speak and you can say that with confidence.
We often say at Justice for All that we need to follow the model of the 3 C's. First is care and compassion for the other side. So we do not get consumed by their hate and we do not follow the same path. That's one. Second one is communication. So I just mentioned learn articulation. So learn how to communicate and communicate well as in the best model with the others. And the last one is coalitions. So we work in coalition with many different partners, and every single organization that's working on this, there might be some common ground that we can have a collaboration with. So please, everybody, remember the 3 C's. And also, I need to acknowledge Asiya Hussain for correcting me. Yes, it is not safe for many people to reveal their names. That's not what I meant. Not over here, but very often when we write on social media, or we write to our senators or Congress people, and we choose to give a false name or a false address, that actually does not help very much. So that was what I was referring to. Thank you. I guess that's all the questions that we have for now. If there are any closing remarks, Dr. Bond, that you would like to make, please.
Yeah, I want to say these are tremendously hard times, and our only, I think, refuge is leaning on each other and building the kind of support that we need from each other meaning on a global level, on an organizational level. And we have to do that because these are the lives of millions that depend on it. And I don't know how long it would take, but we also need to think about the long haul and the work forward and to build the kind of movement we need to build in order to bring justice to Palestine and Israel.
With that, I think if there are no more questions, thank you everyone for joining. And this has been an excellent presentation. And I'm quite sure that we might need to do it again. We might need to do a follow-up. And I'm hoping that you will be available if we call on you in the future. And I really do hope that working together, we get a solution to this crisis that we have seen over the last few months, and a solution to the Palestinian and Israeli issue, where both communities live together in peace and collaborate with each other for their own financial as well as spiritual successes. Thank you very much, Doctor.
Thank you, Zahid. Thank you, everybody.